I love the questions that theists ask atheists, and Martimer81 found another list of such questions. He answered them, so here I'll give my answers.
How would you define atheism?
Well, there are several definitions that people use, and instead of arguing over which definition is the right one, I prefer to acknowledge that different people mean different things. The definition that I prefer says that atheism is the lack of a belief and the lack of a suspicion that God exists. If a person does not believe in God but does suspect that there is a God, I would not call that person an atheist.
Do you act according to what you believe, there is no God, or what you don't believe, lack of belief in God?
I act according to my motivations, ultimately, although my motivations are informed by how reality seems to operate. I do the things I do because I expect that what I do will have certain desired consequences. The desires that I seek to fulfill, however, are not ultimately based in beliefs about certain things, but rather my feelings about certain things. I'm sure some will react to this by asking, so you just do whatever you feel like? No, that wouldn't even be possible because some of my feelings and desires are contrary to others, so I wouldn't even be able to act in a way that's consistent with all of them. When I carry out conscious actions, I act according to my strongest desires. In fact, I don't see how it would be possible to do otherwise.
Do you think it's inconsistent for someone who lacks belief in God to work against God's existence by attempting to show that God doesn't exist?
Well, I don't attempt to show that God doesn't exist. I simply try to explain why I am not convinced that God exists. I don't think it's inconsistent for an atheist to try to prove that God doesn't exist, though. Why would it be? Is a Christian being inconsistent if he tries to show that other religions are false? The reason why some atheists try to prove that there is no God is often because the idea of God has been used to justify persecution, and arguing against God's existence is a means of resisting that persecution.
How sure are you that your atheism properly represents reality?
Well, my atheism, specifically theological non-cognitivism, is not a representation at all, so it can't be an improper representation. I don't understand what God is, so I am simply unable to formulate any representation of God or his relationship with reality.
How sure are you that your atheism is correct?
Again, my atheism is not a position that can have a truth value. My variety of theological non-cognitivism is the inability to take a position on whether God exists, so it can neither be correct nor incorrect.
How would you define what truth is?
I define it in a very practical way. I will treat ideas as true insofar as they are the most consistent with experience, and they are the simplest falsifiable explanations for whatever phenomenon they describe. Now, you may respond that ideas can accurately predict experience without being consistent with reality if one's experiences are all illusory or hallucinatory. I agree, but I consider it to be irrelevant. I only care about whether ideas are consistent with experience because I only consider an idea useful insofar as it allows me to control my experiences. I don't care whether I'm in the matrix as long as the matrix behaves in a way that allows me to reliably navigate it.
Why do you believe your atheism is a justifiable position to hold?
Well, my kind of atheism is not a position at all, so it can't be justified or unjustified.
Are you a materialist or a physicalist or what?
When it comes to what kinds of substance I believe in, I think the assertion that all substance is physical is tautological and meaningless, and the assertion that some or all substance is non-physical is contradictory and meaningless. It is for this reason that I call myself a neutral monist.
Do you affirm or deny that atheism is a worldview?
There are kinds of atheism that are worldviews, but the kind of atheism with which I identify is not.
Not all atheists are antagonistic to Christianity, but for those of you who are, why the antagonism?
I'm not antagonistic toward Christianity per se, so I can't speak for those who are, but I suppose I can often come off as antagonistic toward it because I respond to apologists. I don't oppose people being Christian, but when they start trying to impose the rules of Christianity on the rest of us, I have to speak up about it. And if they say things like atheism is irrational, I like to respond.